It's an attempt to tell the contemporary history of Lebanon and all the upheavals and the ups and downs of Lebanon. So it's the Lebanon I knew, the Lebanon that I grew up in. So sometimes it's a Lebanon that's traversed by wars and conflicts, but sometimes it's actually a prosperous Lebanon and a vibrant Beirut, where it is actually good to be. And the third one is the chapter where Beirut is going through political turmoil, economic crisis, and societal decline. Now, to tell the story, obviously, because it's so generic, I went into the very specific story of a couple, and they have two completely different visions of the world, and it's two antagonistic forces of nature. So him extremely optimistic and full of life and joy, and her much more down to earth, much more pragmatic. She sees reality the way it is. But at the root of it all, I was circling around this central question, which is whether or not to bring children into such an uncertain world. So having these two extremes, try to answer that question over the backdrop of a country that keeps going up and down, can be the summary of the film in one question. The comedy and the humor is such an inherent part of the Lebanese and Lebanese identity. I think we're just very funny people in the way we speak and the way we deal with situations, and especially in times of crisis. You see, like the sense of humor and the comedy starts becoming more of a tool of defense, or a defense mechanism, and a tool of survival against all the darkness that surrounds us. So it wasn't that much of a forceful decision of trying to insert so much comedy into the film, but it arises naturally from the dialogue, the way we speak, and the actors I was casting. I was casting very humorous and funny people, and most of the times I would let them improvise around the text, and a lot of the comedy and the jokes that they came up with weren't even in the script, but obviously I decided to keep them. So it gives you this the sense of comedy even in dark times, which reflects the title of It's a Sad and Beautiful World. A sad and beautiful world, and having these two contradicting pillars coexist. I think that the island can be whatever you want it to be. So you can see the island as paradise, as eternal life, the promise of eternal love, and it's really the place that they go to, at least mentally, when things get a bit too harsh around them. So it's kind of a mental safe haven that they resort to, a place that is only for them, where families are intact and where love is eternal. But I think one of the messages of the film, at least towards the end, is that this island could be Beirut if you choose to see it this way. The character of Yasmina, Munya Aqel, I actually wrote for her. So she's not, she's not an actor. She's actually a director. But I really thought that she would do a phenomenal job with this part, and I was kind of inspired with how she is when I wrote the part. So I was really picturing her. But then I had to do a bit of convincing, because she's so used to being behind the camera that it took a bit of convincing to put her in front of the camera. But because I was looking for this person that can at the same time be very distant and cold, but you can see a sparkle and a sparkle in her eye, and you can see some childish innocence that needs to be taken out of her by the character of Nino. So this is where I went into trying to find Nino, because you have to find an actor that is instantly lovable. As soon as you see him, you could spend the next 2 hours with him, and he's full of life, and he's like all over the place and chaotic. He's a bit like Beirut in a character, but at the same time, on top of the comedy, he needs to be a serious dramatic actor. So combining both is not evident, but I remember I auditioned a bunch of actors, and when Hassan Aqel came, there was something in his eyes where I'm like I'm feeling something, when I look at him, which I have the same when I look at Munya's eyes. So and then we did chemistry run, and the chemistry was great between them, and they really played the game all the way. They really became a couple, a creative couple before the shoot, and we worked on the whole backstory of having these two characters. As soon as you see them, you feel that there's a magnetic attraction that's years and years long. Before making this film, I did 2 feature documentaries. So, like, I love playing with footage and images, and especially, images related to Lebanese memory and Lebanese heritage, cinematic heritage. So I decided, to use the archivals. It was actually a decision in post-production. It wasn't written in the script, because I felt that it could anchor the time period we're in. In just a few images, you can get a sense of what the city feels like. Is it a good period or is it a bad period? So, I started using mostly other documentary films that were shot in the 80s and in the, recently, 2019, 2020. So yeah, this is this I guess comes from my documentary background, wanting to insert himself in the fiction realm. Yeah. I was, personally, struggling with this question for quite some time, but I'll tell you a small anecdote, and I think it might answer your question. But as I was shooting the film, on the last day of shoot, when we were shooting the last shot of the film, my baby was born. Like, my wife gave birth. My baby was born, prematurely, but he was born in a way that it coincided when I was, finishing the film. So I was giving birth to a film. She was giving birth to a child. So I think this answers your question.